On August 12, 1967, 19-year-old Julie Helgeson and her friend 18-year-old Roy Ducat set up their sleeping bags under the stars, so no tent, about 500 meters away from the Granite Park Chalet in Glacier National Park, which is in Montana. The two were going to get to watch this crazy lightning storm that was going on, just this amazing show before they would eventually fall asleep. Eventually they did fall asleep, only to be awakened a few hours later at 12:30 a.m. by this horrible smell. And very quickly, Julie, to her horror, discovers where this smell is coming from. There's an adult grizzly bear just looming over the two of them in the darkness. And she whispers over at Roy and she says, "Play dead." But as soon as she says this, the bear just rips Roy out of his sleeping bag. It jumps on Roy's back and it begins biting his shoulder before it moves down and begins biting his legs, and then it's biting him on the back. Now Roy, amazingly, is able to stay silent, stay limp. He plays dead. And when the bear thinks that it's killed Roy, it turns to Julie. And now Roy can hear the sound of this bear biting into Julie through her sleeping bag, and Julie immediately begins screaming for somebody to come help them. At this point, the bear picks her up and begins dragging her downhill away from the chalet towards the woods. Roy, he gets up and he kind of runs, hobbles to this camper that's not too awfully far away, and he's pounding on the door. A man opens up the camper door and sees him all bloodied. The man gives him some medical aid, and they call for help. They call Rangers. A helicopter comes in, gets Roy, flies him to a hospital, and, he makes it just fine. And then this park ranger is gathering a group of people to go look for Julie in the darkness, but it takes them 2 hours to gather enough people where they feel safe. Eventually, they get about a dozen people, including a doctor, and they go down the hill in search of her. They come across a blood trail, and about 100 yards away from where she was initially attacked, in the woods, they come across Julie. And amazingly, she's alive. But her right forearm has been gnawed down to the bone. She has puncture wounds in her throat and in her chest, in her lungs. She has bite marks all over her legs, which have since stopped bleeding, which is not a good sign. So they scoop her up, they bring her back to the chalet, they get her there at about 3:45 a.m., where two doctors who are staying at the chalet begin to work on her. But very quickly they realize she's lost too much blood and they just don't have what they need to save her. There's no way that they're going to save her life. So they do the only thing that they can think to do, which is give her an injection of painkillers to ease her passing. And then a priest held her hand and gave her her last rites until he felt her go limp, and she was pronounced dead at 4:12 a.m. What nobody knew was just miles away, a different bear attacked a different girl, and it was much worse.